Hi and welcome to the first video of this section. In the previous section we saw real-life tasks with Ember.js. In this section we'll use Ember validations, then we'll use Ember.js with d3.js, sockets, and finally we'll use server-side rendering. Now we move on to the first video of this section that deals with validations. In this video we'll take a look at two examples on validation. In the first example, we'll use a component and check data based on a few simple validation rules. In the second example, we'll use a popular Ember add-on to make things easier. Data form validation is a very common use case in web development. The end user will know immediately if they've made a mistake when you create validation rules in your application. As I said earlier, we will take two examples in this video. So let's begin with the first one. So to start with, in a new application, create two components and install the validation add-on. The val-example component will be the first example. The val-example2 component will be the second example using the Ember-cp-validations add-on. So now we first update the val-example.hbs component template file. This component asks for an age. If the button is clicked, the check action will be triggered. So, simple input helper is used to capture the input. The error property displays the error text. Next we go to the val-example.js component file and add a check action and simple validation method. The check action calls the validation method. So, what is the purpose of validation method? Its only purpose is to return true if the value is a number and return false if the value is not. This result is used to set the error property that will be used in the template. This is a fairly simple example. It shows what you might need to validate the field. So can you guess what could be another example? So it might be creating a new computed property and have it depend on the num property. Either way will work. Now we add the component to the application.hbs template file. Next we run Ember server and enter a non-numeric value in the text box. The window will be displayed on your screen. The error in box message is displayed because a number was not entered. That was triggered after the check button was clicked. In the next example, we'll use an Ember add-on instead. So let's move ahead with the second example. Update the val-example2.hbs template file so that it can accept an email and number. The second component is a little more complicated than the first. We'll be validating two form fields, a number field and an email field. In addition, we'll be surrounding the message in a div tag that will be used to help set color of the text. Both fields will be validated after pressing the check button. Now, create a new validations.js file in the components folder. So why is this file needed? We need it for the Ember-cp validation add-on and to define our validation rules. We begin by naming each property and defining the validations needed. We can validate many types of different inputs. A list of these validations can be found here. The validator comes with several pre-built messages. We can override these messages by setting the message property. In the preceding code, the num and email validators have custom messages. Also, the num validator checks to see whether any value is in the field and whether it's a number. The email field checks to see whether the value is in the format of an email address. Now add a new check action to the component. After setting up the validations file, you can add it to the component as a Mixin. Once you've added the validations Mixin, you'll have access to the validate method. This is a promise that returns after it validates the fields. The validates have an isValid property. This will only return true if both properties, num and email, pass validation. Now we can check each individual validation as well. We can also access the model properties in the component. This model will have both the num and email properties. We can use isValid to check whether the validation failed. If it did, we can set the message we created earlier with num.messages. In the preceding code, if the validation is not valid, then we set the error message that will be triggered in the template after the check action is triggered. This add-on is very flexible. We can create our own custom validations if needed. Now we update the application.hbs file with the second component, and also display the second component example in our application template. So let us now start the Ember server and enter invalid values for age and email, and click on the check button. Now you can see this image will be displayed on your screen. After clicking the check button, an action is triggered. The validators we created earlier check the text and return whether the text is valid or not. In this instance, the text is not valid, so it displays an error message. So before we finish this video, let us understand how it worked. Data form validation is an extremely important feature of any web app. Any Ember application that has any type of user forms will need to validate data. Ember.js can retrieve data from templates and validate it. Other properties can be used to toggle or set error messages to be displayed. We are lucky to have an Ember CP Validations add-on which makes this process easier, so you can create your own validations or use some of the built-in ones. This code uses computed properties and other methods to validate and report back issues to the user. You can also check out this website for more information where you will find several other popular validation add-ons available for Ember. In this video, we used a component to check data based on a few simple validation rules and learn how to use Ember add-on. Excellent!